The Overwatch community has been in shambles over the horrible announcement that the many, many years and resources of developer time has been wasted, that the PvE as we knew it has been canceled. Now they're trying to weasel their way out of this terminology, and I've noticed many of you are buying some of this Blizzard BS, but they've done multiple shady things in this entire exchange that I am very upset about. And listen for the next few minutes if you think it's okay for them to still be calling this a PvE, because I don't think it is. But first, let's hear them out. Game producer Neuss goes to Twitter. A clarification that I wanted to make: while we made the decision to cut the hero mode and the talents, we have a lot of great PvE content coming this year. Big story missions, new cinematics, co-op events, and the single-player hero mastery missions are all on the way. I want to also acknowledge that today has been a challenging day for many of us in the Overwatch community, players and developers alike. We understand that today's news about the scope of the PvE is frustrating. We on the Overwatch leadership team didn't make the decision lightly. We love the world of Overwatch and have many new stories to tell. Moving in this direction gives us confidence that we can tell those stories, albeit in a different way than we originally communicated. Our next Director's Take blog will be out on Friday with more context. All right, guys, I know many of you and I have been gamers for a long time. I got like 20 years enjoying video games. Let me ask you a question, gamer to gamer. Would you say Call of Duty has a PvE mode? Or does it have a campaign? In Super Mario, you jump on a Goomba. Is that PvE? I mean, technically, right? Player versus environment. Yeah, technically, it's PvE. But we all know what PvE means, what it originally meant, why they used it in that context so many years ago. In my entire history playing games, PvE was always in the context of RPG games to differentiate from the smaller PvP portion of those games. Because in those other games I mentioned, you don't need to call it PvE. You just call it the game. So while yes, technically a story mission campaign is PvE, but they also called Starwatch a PvE hybrid, and Starwatch had turrets and a Doomfist AI that walked in and fed. What counts as PvE nowadays? Does the training range count as PvE? You're shooting a bot? Like, get out of here. You know what it's supposed to mean when they say PvE. No. We've got a campaign in which it might be good. I'm probably the most optimistic of anybody that I've seen on the campaign hero missions. I think it might even be somewhat better and work like the right scope for this game. I think there's a lot of positives to be had about it, but I'm not going to be lied to and buy the marketing propaganda that it's still the same thing. You know it's not. Come on, it's canceled. The endlessly replayable PvE RPG game that they were making is canceled. Now we get like a souped up version of the Archives event, the Junkenstein event. They are already saying this in the interviews. Don't buy the marketing BS from these guys, okay? Starwatch wasn't PvE, and neither is this. Call it what it is. But the reasons to be upset don't end there, because they've also revealed things in the article interview with Neuss and Aaron Keller on GameSpot, things that I don't think the community is mad enough about. Most people are just mad that the aspects of the game they wanted to see were canceled, wasted development time, all that, but they did something incredibly shady here that I do not want to forgive them for. In the GameSpot interview, they're asked, how did they come to this decision? Aaron Keller says, yeah, this was a process. The development of any game is a process. In the years following our announcement at BlizzCon 2019, we had a really large portion of our team working on the PvE side of the game. And I think players of our live running game could feel that because we eventually stopped making content for it. It's been maybe 2.5 years since the last hero that we launched, and we don't want to be back at the point where it's another 3.5 years since launching a PvP map. So we really looked hard at what we were doing with the live game in a service of this much bigger thing, and we were working on and hoping to release later. Okay, all that we already know. The interesting thing about it is, it's such a difference releasing content for players that are playing your game instead of saving up all that content for one big release that you're going to do later. So we came to the realization that this wasn't the right way to be developing for all of Overwatch. It was about 1.5 years ago that we made the decision to really shift strategy. 1.5 years ago? Hold on a second. That's when we rapidly shifted the resources on our team to work on launching Overwatch 2, and that came out last last October. But at the same time, we came away from that first experience with a new value for developing Overwatch. It was a new value for running the team, namely to always be putting out fresh, exciting, fun, new experiences for our players. As we were running up to launching Overwatch 2, we realized that we could not build that other game. So that's before October, guys. Before the release of Overwatch 2, they made this decision that the other game was canceled. That's what he's saying. We couldn't save up all that content over the course of what was looking to be at least the next several years to finish it. And by doing that, pulling more and more resources from the people that were all playing our game and all the people that would be playing Overwatch 2. So we made the decision later last year that we would focus all of our efforts on the live running game and all of our PvE efforts on this new story arc that we're launching in season 6. And then on top of that, to keep all of our PvE efforts, all of our co-op efforts invested in our seasonal releases rather than that one big boxed release. Okay, so we knew it was going to be cut up into parts, but we didn't know that it was like 90% scrapped from its original vision. They knew this and didn't tell us until now. All they said at the launch was that we'll talk about PvE in 2023. We didn't know it had changed at all, other than obviously the distribution model would be different. So they collected up all those battle pass dollars, all those skin dollars, and I feel like it's been a massive bait and switch, because you could have told us that then, but it would have hurt the early burst of money they were going to gain for Overwatch 2. So many Blizzard fans assumed that those microtransactions were going to be going to build something bigger and better, supporting the developers. Meanwhile, in the back, they already gutted all of the RPG components they originally sold us on. The reason why the game deserved the 2, remember? Because it was this entire separate game. They canceled the separate game. This makes the whole like Overwatch 1.5 criticisms even worse, because now we're only getting bits and pieces of that original vision. And is that stuff going to be behind a paywall? I bet it is. I have no doubt that the hero missions and story is going to be good, because when they make a cinematic for Overwatch 2, I almost cry, okay? The enemy design and mechanics of Overwatch is going to be fun, so I bet that the story missions are good, but I think it's incredibly disingenuous for them to try to make it seem like, oh, we're still making the PvE. In fact, we'll give you PvE information next year. Don't worry about it, guys. Buy up your battle passes today. Actually, no, it's just a campaign, which might still be good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just an entirely different game. Stop calling it a PvE. It's a co-op story campaign mission, probably like Left 4 Dead, probably like Jason Schreier originally leaked it many years ago on Kotaku. That could still be good, but waiting this long to tell us this is a massive slap in the face, and you should not accept these lies from Blizzard. All right, let's get into some more quotes from the article to better understand what we actually are getting. GameSpot asks, are you basically not doing the PvE? Aaron replies in saying, I would characterize it slightly differently, which is we are doing part of what the team had set out to do, but not entirely of what we discussed back on BlizzCon 2019. And a crucial bit of context is missing from this quote, Aaron, because there was also BlizzCon Line, where you gave another big update about it with a lot more information. That was the last big interview Jeff Kaplan was on before he handed the reins off to the new strategy. So I have to imagine it was still the plan at that point. Don't be lied to make it seem like, oh yeah, that was so many years ago, we had this plan. No, that wasn't so long ago. BlizzCon Line was 2 years ago, 2 years after the original 2019 announcement. Don't play these games withholding pertinent information. Okay, back to the quotes. Aaron says that the real focus is on our story missions and that experience, as opposed to the more open-ended hero mode and that stuff, aka the RPG game. Aaron says, yeah, definitely not doing the hero mode or the talents and the power progression system. So if you take all that out, you just got a campaign, as far as I'm concerned. Now, despite all my anger and rage during this, Jared Neuss is new to the team to help execute the new plan that may have even already been set in motion by the time he got there. I'm not exactly sure, but I respect his candid responses. And in some ways, I far prefer this rather than the game being stuck in limbo with a lot of dishonest communication. I rather be given it straight. But I don't like how they're trying to like whitewash history. Jared Neuss explains they went through all the development process, and he says you get into the meat of it and you start feeling it out. Like, okay, well, is this fun? Is this good? Is the original idea the thing that we think is going to be awesome? And then you iterate on that until you find something you're really excited about. And then this is the important producer point of view. This is his job to to manage the resources of the team, the ones that he has available. Let's leave Activision Blizzard off to the side and Bobby Kotick and how that's been mismanaged with the amount of resources this team gets. But then Jared Neuss says, okay, we have a good idea of what direction this could go in. The next question is, what does it take to get there? He goes on to explain some of the development realities of this. He says, so I think if you're building a game where you're taking the exact same engine, the exact same team, the exact same crew that has already shipped that same thing and doing version 3 or 4 versions of it, kind of sounds like he's talking about Call of Duty or something, right? It's pretty easy to plan really well in advance. But for games like this, it's tougher because the team was building something that is totally different from anything they'd built before. Those story missions are significantly different than archives or other ways that we've told stories inside the game before. And so developing those, what it takes to do that, the technology required, the people required, the iteration required, it's all different. So I understand that people think it's probably relatively simple. It's definitely not. And especially because what you don't want is to just try to build the thing, get it out the door and move on. You want to build something that really resonates and that people love. So I guess my take is just that the team learned more about what it took to make this and learned more about the time, the iteration, and the technology required. It just became clear that the schedule wasn't going to work. Keller adds on with this and says, I think the scope of the hero missions was really, really large. And what it was going to take to finish it was going to be a pretty remarkable, massive lift. You think about a game that is supposed to be almost its own standalone co-op experience that people are going to be able to play as a main game, and not just how do you put all the content into that to finish it. Even just a small piece of it, the talent trees, 40 to 50 talents per hero, over 35 heroes. You're looking at thousands of talents to make everything just go to get the game out the door. Plus all of the content and the missions you'd be playing to do that. And it is a pretty gargantuan ask for a team. And then on top of that, you need to run that as a live game. So content has to be continually coming out for that side of the game. Yeah, we knew all of this. We expected all of this. Why didn't you expect all of this? Activision Blizzard, I'm not just talking to Aaron here. This is why Jeff left, because this was the vision of the game. You knew how big it was. You could do the math beforehand. Activision Blizzard just didn't put enough resources to reasonably make this game a thing. And I feel for Aaron with this, because if you look to other RPG games, like Diablo 4 has a handful of characters with, yeah, lots of skill trees and RPG mechanics and itemization and all of the game that is required to play through that as well. That's a huge lift, and it's taken them years and years with a delay to finally get to a point where it looks amazing. But what we know is this dev team was asked to make 2 games at once. So while I really don't like being lied to, I understand the decisions they've made, all of them. They've decided to downscale the scope of the PvE into something that I wouldn't consider a PvE, and I think that can still be good. I actually don't need the PvE missions, campaign, boogaloo, whatever we're calling it, to be endlessly replayable. I don't need it to be an RPG PvE. A cool campaign would do wonders for me in Overwatch, I feel. As long as it's quality, that's all I want. I can handle a smaller scope, I just can't handle Star Watch. Now, GameSpot asks, there was a lot of cool things for PvE. Is any of it going to retain in the game in any other capacity? Aaron Keller says, we would love to see more of that in the game. And while that was an integral part of our hero missions, as in like the different talents and abilities, ways to modify your character, Aaron goes on to say, we're not doing those anymore. So those won't come to the game that way, but we put a lot of work into our hero talents, and there were a lot of really exciting things, not just with the gameplay, but with the fantasy of what a hero was when we could start interacting with that hero that way. So we'd like to bring those back in the future. It's just going to take a different form than being a part of a new co-op experience. More broadly speaking, you're probably done a lot of work on the PvE. How much of that is going to make its way into PvP or repurposed? Aaron Keller says there's a lot that went into developing PvE, and it's not just the content that we made, some of the tools and technology. So if you look at Junkenstein's Wrath of the Bride from last year, that was using all of our new mission technology that we had developed for Overwatch 2. So the PvE content that we develop in the future is going to be using all of that technology and tools that we created before. It'll be using new enemy ecologies that we've developed for Overwatch 2. There are a lot of really big story mission maps that we're going to be coming out with it. Jared shares a bit more of the upside with this for Overwatch 2 PvP players. He says, yeah, I think the breadth of experiences that we've been able to deliver this year are significantly different and more interesting than a lot of the live events from Overwatch 1 had. And then I think a lot of this is because of the work that went into the PvE and engine revamp. So going forward, I think you should expect to see a lot more of that, a lot more pretty wild seasonal events where we experiment with stuff, and a lot of cool non-canonical stuff like the Battle for Olympus, where we're augmenting hero abilities, which, as you can imagine, maybe some of those were thought to be hero talents in the older version of the game. The GameSpot article had a lot more in it, but those were the things that stood out to me. Now I want to take a look at some other news and tweets. In the chaos of all of this, Blizzard announced that BlizzCon is coming back November 3rd and 4th. I was reading through Twitter and just saw a lot of very sad Overwatch fans. A lot of the sentiments I think I've already covered in this video, but I wanted to close in the tweet that I sent out yesterday. This is how I feel about the whole situation. Really sad the unreasonable positions Activision Blizzard management puts their devs in. Worse yet, they have to be the public-facing voices to overpromise to take back a news cycle, then apologize when they can't deliver on the pipe dream they were told to chase with insufficient resources. Guys, these devs aren't dumb. When dumb things come out of their mouth, it isn't because they're dumb, it's because that's the best thing that they can say publicly, okay? They're explaining in the GameSpot article like they're just realizing how much a different game costs to make. Like it just dawned on them. Like, wow, having one team to make 2 games at the same time doesn't really make much sense, does it? Yeah, they all knew that every step of the way. They're the ones making it. The ones to blame here are the greedy businessmen who want to have the maximum profit with the minimum amount of investment into their team. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that it's time for Bobby Kotick to go. I mean, there's a million other reasons besides this one, obviously, but what is he even good for? The guy gets the credit for churning out Call of Duty titles like he's a mastermind genius behind rehashing content. But that wasn't what Blizzard was ever supposed to be about. And I speak as a fan who was a fan of Blizzard as a young child through teenagehood into adulthood. So those competing forces in the company really sicken me. But I am inspired to see them make the tough decision of scrapping overly ambitious ideas that they can't execute on to instead make something they're proud of that's smaller in scope. I think we can still have an awesome Overwatch 2 in our future, but we're going to have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.